Good evening. Welcome to the news today. These are the headlines that dominated today's headlines. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed that he would safeguard Israel's interests during his upcoming meeting. Sounds of war are getting closer as Ukraine and Russia mobilize troops to Crimea, creating the biggest confrontation between Moscow and the West since the Cold War. And hundreds of thousands of Ultraorthodox Jews gather for a mass protest in Jerusalem against a new bill that would see them drafted into the army.
The News Today with Lucy Aharish.
Good evening. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu left for Washington today for a series of meetings with U.S. administration officials. The peace process with the Palestinians and Iran's nuclear program are expected to dominate discussions. In addition to President Barack Obama, Netanyahu is also expected to hold talks with Secretary of State John Kerry and with congressional leaders. This is what he had to say upon departing.
I am leaving now on an important trip to the U.S., where I will meet with President Barack Obama. We will discuss the Iranian issue and the diplomatic process. I will stand steadfast on the state of Israel's vital interests, especially the security of Israel's citizens.
Aside from meeting with United States President Barack Obama at the White House on his D.C. trip, the Israeli Prime Minister is set to take part in another key meeting for his administration with AIPAC. I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev on the lobby Netanyahu could need to pressure Congress on Iran.
It's not just a political convention, but an American Jewish power demonstration. A record number of 14,000 pro-Israel activists will embark on Sunday to a Washington pilgrimage, the annual policy conference of the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, or AIPAC. During the 3 days of conference, distinguished keynote speakers, workshops, and breakout sessions will debate Iran's nuclear ambitions and Israeli-Palestinian talks.
If it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, then what is it? What is it? That's right. It's a duck, but this duck is a nuclear duck.
But this year's conference comes after a difficult year for the pro-Israel lobby, one of the most powerful interest groups on Capitol Hill. After the call for American military action in Syria failed, AIPAC got on the wrong side of the White House again, and on the issue it cares about most, Iran's nuclear program. AIPAC, like Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, opposed the interim deal with Iran and is widely skeptical of the U.S. administration and its allies' conduct of the negotiations. Until last month, the Jewish lobby supported an Iran sanctions bill by Senators Robert Menendez and Mark Kirk, threatening to impose more sanctions if the Iran talks fail.
For the sake of our national security, we must give diplomacy a chance to succeed.
After the White House threatened to veto the legislation, warning it could jeopardize the talks, AIPAC retreated, saying the legislation should be shelved for a later date. Traditionally, on the last day of the conference, activists swamp Capitol Hill and advocate on behalf of Israel in meetings with their representatives. But in recent years, AIPAC members portraying themselves as a broad bipartisan lobby are increasingly being accused of taking sides. Their challenge is how to speak pro-Israel without shattering support for their legislation.
And joining me from Washington, D.C. is I-24 News diplomatic correspondent Tal Shalev. Good evening, Tal.
Good evening, Lucy.
So, Tal, what is the focus of Benjamin Netanyahu and Barack Obama meeting?
Well, we have to say that Netanyahu's visit to Washington is overshadowed by the unraveling events in Ukraine, which of course are catching most of the headlines and most of the media attention. And there's also a hard winter storm expected here tomorrow. But nevertheless, every meeting of Obama and Netanyahu draws much attention because of their well-known rocky relationship over the years. It's been almost half a year since the last meeting at the White House. That was in September. And during that period, the six world powers reached the interim deal with Iran. So the Iran negotiations will be one of the main topics on the agenda. And the other issue, of course, is the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. Obama intends to give the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry's efforts a final push. He thinks this is the time to take a more active role. He's going to pressure both Netanyahu and Abbas, whom he'll be meeting with in 2 weeks' time, to do what it takes and move forward. So these two issues, the Israeli-Palestinian peace negotiations and the negotiations with Iran, are the main topics of the meeting tomorrow.
Oh, Tal Shalev, our I-24 News diplomatic correspondent, thank you very much for this. Spain's Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy announced today that veteran Spanish journalist Marc Marginedas has been freed in Syria. Marginedas had been kidnapped in Syria in early September last year near the western town of Hama and was moved to different locations in areas controlled by the opposition. Rajoy said the freed journalist is in reasonable shape and happy. The situation in Crimea continues to intensify. Russian authorities approved sending 150,000 troops to the Crimean Peninsula, and American, French, and British officials announced they will put off the upcoming G8 summit in Sochi as a response. Is the situation on the brink of a disaster? I-24 News reporter Uli Shapiro has more.
The Russian flag is raised above Crimea, while Russia's presence deepens in the area. According to Ukrainian authorities, 30 armored vehicles and 6,000 men have already been deployed. In Sevastopol, the Ukrainian Coast Guard has been besieged by 300 men claiming to be mandated by Russia. Armed with Kalashnikov rifles, they have already taken over several strategic sites in the peninsula, including Simferopol, Sevastopol, and Kirovsky airports.
An inadequate Russian presence on the territory of the Crimea is nothing but a provocation, and Russia's attempt to make Ukraine react in the same forceful way have failed.
The Russian-Crimean relations go back to the Soviet era, when Ukraine and Russia were unified. The Soviet Union established a major naval base in Sevastopol, an important strategic point leading to the Black Sea. In 1992, following the collapse of the USSR, the people of Crimea voted to stay in independent Ukraine after a stormy referendum. Nevertheless, Crimea remained with a Russian majority. Only 24% of the population is Ukrainian, and many of the residents still see themselves as faithful to Mother Russia.
Why war? Here there are Crimeans. They speak Russian. We want to join Russia. That's why I don't see anything wrong here.
The international community still finds it hard to cope with the latest developments. World leaders expressed their concern, but as it's proved before, the world can do very little to stop Russian aggression.
What Russia is doing now in Ukraine violates the principles of the United Nations Charter. It threatens peace and security in Europe. Russia must stop its military activities and its threats.
Russia is going to lose. The Russian people are going to lose. He's going to lose all of the glow that came out of the Olympics, his $60 billion extravaganza. He is not going to have a Sochi G8. He may not even remain in the G8 if this continues.
Meanwhile, the Speaker of the Crimean Parliament insists that the situation in the peninsula has stabilized. Whether or not this is truly the case, what once was a shadow war seems now to be coming to light.
And joining me right now live from Kiev is I-24 News anchor Jacob Elon. Jacob, what were your first impressions arriving today in Kiev?
Good evening from Kiev, Lucy. We're actually on the brink of war. At least the Ukrainian government is blaming the Russian actions in Crimea Peninsula today as an aggression, an act of war, a declaration of war. It's their words. They put the word out. And the tension is very high, both here in Kiev and especially down there around the Crimea Peninsula. Today, Russian troops have been dismantling, according to some reports, Ukrainian troops. It all went peacefully, but this is really short of the official fact that Crimea Peninsula is under Russian control this evening. The big question is what's going to happen next here in Kiev, here in the northern part of Ukraine. They have been mobilizing the military today. Tensions are high and getting higher. And here in the middle of the city, in the main Independence Square, they're chanting here all evening long, especially worried of some cities and places that are sympathizing with the Russian troops and with the Russian actions. And this brings the tension to new levels here in Kiev tonight.
Jacob, no one expected, I think, this next step. No one expected that Russia will actually maybe prepare itself for a war. What are the voices that you're hearing from the people who are right now in Kiev? Did they expect this?
Well, we'll have to wait and see how far President Putin is ready to go on this. Definitely when the Ukrainian government today saying this is a declaration of war, we don't know how things could escalate here. We have to put it in a little, context and history. It's a question of ethnicity in Crimea Peninsula. It's a question of nationality. And it's a question of history. We should remember that this peninsula was actually given as a sort of a gift by Khrushchev in the 1950s, he was a Ukrainian himself. It was like a gift to the Ukrainian people. And ethnically, more than 50% of the population in the Crimea Peninsula are Russians. There's a small Tatari minority there, and the rest are Ukrainians. It's very complicated. It's not a clear-cut situation in the eyes of many people in the peninsula and some Ukrainians as well.
Yes, Jacob Elon, live from Kiev, thank you very much for this. When Barack Obama became president, he was committed to warming ties with Russia. But more than 5 years later, the ongoing battle for Ukraine has sparked memories of the Cold War. Here in the Middle East, relations between the two former foes have also become extremely tense. I-24 News correspondent Charles Biblizer reports.
I wanted to present you with a little gift which represents what President Obama and Vice President Biden and I have been saying, and that is we want to reset our relationship.
U.S. President Barack Obama came to office intent on mending relations with Moscow. As a first order of business, he signed a nuclear disarmament treaty to reduce the U.S. arsenal to Russian levels. Washington also abandoned plans for a missile defense shield in Eastern Europe, which had irked the Kremlin.
I am a strong believer that the reset between the United States and Russia has benefited this region as well as the United States and Russia, because it's reduced tensions.
Obama's grand declaration was made in Warsaw in 2011. Less than 3 years later, it rings hollow, with the ongoing tug of war in nearby Ukraine having assumed a Cold War dynamic. This might have been anticipated, with the US and Russia butting heads throughout the globe. And nowhere is this truer than in the Middle East, where Moscow is reasserting itself. In Syria, Russian President Vladimir Putin has thrown his full weight behind the embattled government, pitting him against the White House, which has repeatedly called on Bashar al-Assad to step down. There is also the matter of Iran's atomic program. While Washington is committed to preventing Tehran from obtaining nuclear weapons, Russia built the Bushehr nuclear reactor and has reportedly negotiated a major oil-for-goods deal with the Islamic Republic, helping it to circumvent international sanctions. Russia also has seemingly displaced the United States as the most influential foreign power in Egypt, and has shown a desire to assume a larger role in the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. It seems that Obama's reset with Russia has failed. The question now is whether the relationship between the two former foes will, in fact, regress as far back as the Cold War era.
We will wait and see, and until then, let's see what is happening inside Israel. Hundreds of thousands of ultra-Orthodox Jews gathered for a mass protest in Jerusalem against a new bill that would see them drafted into the army. Although it's supposed to be implemented in 2017, once again, the matter has sparked one of the most controversial debates in Israeli society. I24 News correspondent Elio Holmberg has more.
In what may be considered the largest Jewish gathering in modern times, hundreds of thousands of ultra-Orthodox or Haredi men, women and children protested today in a mass prayer rally at the entrance of Jerusalem to voice their opposition to the new government bill forcing the ultra-Orthodox to serve in the army.
We're seeing hundreds of thousands Orthodox Jews coming to make a statement. Okay, in the Knesset there was a statement made last week which limitized the number of students that could sit and study in the Torah. And we're making a statement that we disagree with that, and we think that the future and the continuation of the Jewish nation depends on how many are going to sit and study.
All the ultra-Orthodox streams joined forces, an irregular event, and arranged this massive rally with people from all across Israel attending the demonstrations and praying together, creating a startling image. It's not for nothing that so many people gathered to protest. The issue of military service in the Haredi society is extremely sensitive. According to the new breakthrough law, Haredis will be obliged to serve in the IDF or to do national service, regardless of their Bible studies. This bill, which includes criminal sanctions, was strongly promoted by two major Israeli parties, Yesh Atid and the Jewish Home, and became the most important issue on the Israeli agenda.
Zionism has returned with pride. The bill will finally heal a wound in the heart of Israeli society.
Today, the ultra-Orthodox community made a very determined statement. They are willing to fight forcefully against any law, and though it may be a cliché, they've made it very clear that this war is not yet over.
And joining me live from Jerusalem's I24 News correspondent Elio Holmberg. Good evening, Eli. So we can say that the events today and this big demonstration is the peak of the split between the Orthodox Jews and the secular Jews?
Well, Lucy, as you all can see, this is an extremely massive, powerful event, but not only because it's large scale. This issue of ultra-Orthodox serving in the army is one of the most delicate open wounds in the Israeli society. For many, many years, the gap between the non-Orthodox and ultra-Orthodox society has been growing. Both sides feel extremely distant from one another, and those gaps doesn't seem to be closing. This current debate only increases the animosity. It's a symbol of the differences and really tears Israel apart. Since Israel was established, there has been a status quo between Orthodox and non-Orthodox regarding the issue of army service, and for the first time it has been broken. The ultra-Orthodox parties has been a major power in the Israeli government for many years, and this current government is the first for a long time without their representative, what caused this intensive uproar. Another reason this is an important event is that this is a mutual collaboration within the ultra-Orthodox society. This is very unusual for all the different streams to collaborate and unite. This is something we hadn't seen for a very long time. But as said, because this is a core sizzling issue in Israel, they are all acting together. There is not even one Israeli who do not hold a strong opinion regarding this issue. Let's hear some of them.
Unfortunately, I don't think that in the next 20 years or 30 years there will be any agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians. It doesn't depend on the U.S. government or so. The problem should be solved only between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and that's it.
I think it is possible. Of course, it depends on both sides, Israelis and Palestinians, and I hope they will achieve peace.
I don't think so. Not because they're not working hard, but because it's very difficult to understand the mentality of the area, of the Middle East, and also the mentality of the Arabs. So I think it'll be very difficult, and if it will happen, it'll be a miracle.
Yes, Elio Holmberg, thank you very much for this. And to know more about the news today, stay tuned. 2 minutes break, and I'll be back. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed that he would safeguard Israel's interests during his upcoming meeting with President Barack Obama as he set off for a 5-day trip to the U.S. Sounds of war are getting closer as Ukraine and Russia mobilize troops to Crimea, creating the biggest confrontation between Moscow and the West since the Cold War. And Iranian President Hassan Rouhani slams the assassination of its nuclear scientist as reports emerge that the U.S. is pushing Israel to stop the alleged targeted killings. It has become more or less common knowledge that Israel and Iran have been engaged in a secret war for years, despite denials from both sides. But a new report has seemingly outed Jerusalem, blaming the Israeli government for the targeted killing of Iranian scientists. I-24 News correspondent Charles Biblazer has more.
January 12, 2010, university professor and nuclear scientist Masoud Ali Mohammadi is killed by a bomb outside his Tehran home. November 29, 2010, nuclear engineer Majid Shahriyari is killed in a bomb attack on his car. July 23, 2011, Dairush Razai Najad, a member of Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, is shot dead by 2 gunmen on motorcycles. November 12, 2011, a massive explosion at a military arms depot near Tehran kills 17 members of the Revolutionary Guards, including a missile expert. January 11, 2012, Mustafa Ahmadi Roshan, a nuclear scientist at the Natanz uranium enrichment facility, is killed by a bomb placed on his car.
Multiple Iranian scientists targeted for assassination. Part and parcel of a covert war. The question is, who is responsible? Iran has long accused Israel's Mossad spy agency of carrying out the targeted killings.
They are well aware that Iran is treading a peaceful path in its nuclear technology. They know it for sure. So why did they assassinate our scientists?
And now, a bombshell from CBS News. The Obama administration has seemingly corroborated Tehran's claim. According to the report, White House officials have called on Israel to cease the targeting of scientists in order to allow diplomatic negotiations to take their course. The timing of the report is perhaps uncoincidental, coming a day ahead of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's trip to Washington. This is not the first time the White House has apparently leaked information about Israel's covert actions in Iran. In mid-2012, multiple administration officials alleged that the Stuxnet computer worm, which targeted Iranian nuclear facilities, was a joint U.S.-Israeli initiative. The report stands to further complicate the long-strained U.S.-Israel relationship, as the two countries struggle to find common ground on how best to neutralize Iran's nuclear progress.
To understand a little bit more, joining me right now is Amir Oren, defense and government analyst at Haaretz newspaper. Good evening.
Evening, Lucy.
So this kind of request, maybe it will find Israel secret services like the Mossad and the West in a kind of a problem.
One could hardly testify under oath regarding this report's veracity because it is couched in such terms as my sources in the Mossad are telling me that they are getting the sense of a signal of being pushed and so on and so forth. So one may put aside this particular report, but consider the possibility that indeed with an Iranian-American secret channel, not only during the P5+1 talks in Geneva, but also a back channel, clandestinely held talks between the Iranians and the Americans. This particular point has also been raised regarding a truce, a ceasefire between the West and Iran. And in this context, the Iranians may very well have asked the Americans to put some leverage on the Israelis or whoever they can influence to stop killing their scientists.
Because what? The Iranians know that they cannot reach to an understanding with the West or with the United States without taking Israel under consideration?
The Iranians and the Americans, for that matter, would probably like to broaden the front of their negotiations, talking only about nuclear power, about enrichment, and about facilities is not enough. The Iranians have a larger national security interest in the Persian Gulf, and the Americans want the Iranians to stop meddling in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in other parts. So they are both trying to reach a much broader agreement, including this covert war.
So why is it, I'm just trying to understand here, why is it the world's problem they cannot keep their scientists safe?
Well, they cannot keep the scientists safe because under the radar there is a terror war between Hezbollah and Israel on Iran's behalf, and of course vice versa. Israel is acting inside Iran, not only in such a manner, but perhaps also electronically. We remember the Stuxnet worm, which penetrated Iranian computers. So there are all sorts and forms of warfare which, if Iran and the West are to reach a modus vivendi, would have to be stopped.
Well, this is, I have to say, very interesting. Amil, and thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
The Israeli Ministerial Committee of Legislation voted today to amend the country's existing surrogacy law. The new, instead of resorting to very expensive options overseas, the sensitive bill still has a long way to go before it becomes an actual law and will have to survive 3 votes in the parliament, which consists of some extremely conservative parties. China's officials blamed a group of separatists for last night's attack in the southwestern city of Kunming, during which dozens of people were killed. Here's I-24 News reporter Roni Ben-Bassat with the latest developments.
The city of Kunming is slowly recovering from a nightmare after a number of attackers armed with knives killed at least 29 people and left another 130 injured in a local train station.
A lot of people ran towards the main hall. We didn't know what was going on, but the people in front knelt down and we saw 2 people. One of them had a knife and ran towards us and just started stabbing wildly.
The attack took place on Sunday evening. According to state media, at 9:20 p.m. local time, at least 10 uniformed and masked men began stabbing innocent bystanders. 4 of the attackers were shot and killed on the spot by police, and 1 was captured. The others remain at large in the city.
This serious violent terrorist attack was carried out by Xinjiang separatist forces. It is an utmost cruel atrocity, and the CPC Central Committee and the State Council will invest great attention in the case.
Government officials have condemned the attack and blamed it on local separatist forces, most likely minority Muslim groups seeking autonomy from Chinese rule. The group was also held responsible for an attack last October, when a car was driven into a crowd in Beijing's Tiananmen Square, killing 5 people. The incident comes at a highly sensitive time, as the country prepares for its annual parliamentary sessions, where the subject of domestic security is on the agenda.
And joining me right now from the I-24 News Culture Magazine is Avril Tzvi. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
So let me say, and the Oscar goes to the weather.
The weather, yeah.
In Los Angeles.
They're having a bit of a problem there, but you know what? We're dealing with it all the time here. We don't know what it's going to be, so a little bit a taste for them, a little bit. They never have.
So what should we expect in the next few hours?
Well, you know, everybody's trying to predict the Oscars. It's like a media game now. I think as a general rule of predicting the Oscar, you can say it's going to be the most predictable, boring outcome that they can have. I think so, yeah. I always hope that there's going to be an upset, but it usually never happens. So the big winner of the evening, Best Picture, is most probably going to go to 12 Years a Slave. It's
such a a cliche, I have to say.
It's really is a cliche, you know, in the age of Obama and what they wanted to call the post-racial age. Everybody wants to look so good, you know, talking about slavery, and it's by a respected filmmaker, Steve McQueen. And, you know, the historical epic, everybody loves it. And it really has been getting rave reviews, you know, from wall to wall. And it's probably the safe choice to assume that it's going to win.
Okay, so one cliche is check.
Yeah.
And if we're going to the Prestige Awards, which is the best
actor.
The best actor.
Well, everybody's money is on Matthew McConaughey. Hollywood loves. First of all, it's been his year. He lost a lot of weight. Hollywood loves actors who physically transform themselves, look different. But it's actually been his year. Actually, since his role in Magic Mike, people have been talking about him as a serious actor. He has a TV show now, and I think he has a good chance. Actually, my money is on Chiwetel Ejiofor. I think it's going to be a sweep for 12 Years a Slave. I think Chiwetel is going to take it.
How do you say his name?
Chiwetel Ejiofor.
Chiwetel Ejiofor?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
And next we have the Best Actress, which again, it seems like a clean sweep for Cate Blanchett with an amazing role, we must say, in
definitely.
Blue Jasmine. Some people are saying that maybe the whole Woody Allen debacle is going to hurt her, but I don't really think so. Amy Adams is next in line, sort of. America loves Amy Adams.
Yes.
For supporting actress, it's again for
Director,
12 Years
before
a Slave.
we're finishing. Director.
Director. Well, it's Alfonso Cuarón for sure with Gravity. If it weren't for 12 Years a Slave, he would have taken the best film as well.
So Martin Scorsese is going to be sad again.
Martin Scorsese is going to be sad.
And Leonardo DiCaprio.
Leonardo DiCaprio has got enough.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming tonight. And just look what we prepared. The Oscar first gave a foreign language film award in 1956, and every year since then, the films from around the world compete for the coveted nomination. The Middle East has gotten more recognition in recent years. Here's the retrospective Israeli and Palestinian cinema at the Oscars.
Israel has an impressive history at the Oscars as one of the top 10 most nominated countries of all time. The first Oscar nominee was celebrated actor Chaim Topol, playing Salah Shebati, a Yemenite Jewish immigrant who arrives with his family to Israel, only to find himself settled in a transit camp. Created by Ephraim Kishon, the master of Israeli satire, the film used humor to criticize the social atmosphere of Israel at the time. Moving away from the lightheartedness of earlier nominees, 1973's The House on Shlush Street saw a family of Egyptian immigrants settle in pre-state Tel Aviv. As time passed, politics began to take a center stage in Israeli cinema. The 1984 Barabash brothers film, Beyond the Walls, tells the story of a high-security block of an Israeli prison and the segregation between Jewish and Palestinian inmates. 20 years later, the powerful war film Beaufort by Yossi Sider focused on an Israeli army unit at the Beaufort Castle in southern Lebanon. A year later, Ari Folman's animated feature Waltz with Bashir. Exploring his memories from the First Lebanon War, the film had a profound impact for its unique visual style and anti-war message. Completing a 3-year streak, Ajami, an Arab-Jewish collaboration between Skandar Kopti and Yaron Shani, tells 5 different stories from the impoverished Christian and Muslim Arab neighborhood in Tel Aviv, Jaffa. In 2011, Yosef Sider made it to the Oscars again with his film Footnote. And last year, Palestinian and Israeli films were both shortlisted for Best Documentary. The Gatekeepers, featuring candid interviews with retired Israeli spy masters, and 5 Broken Cameras, which looks behind the lens of an amateur Palestinian cameraman in the West Bank. Palestinian cinema made its debut at the Oscars in 2005 with Hani Abu Assad's film Paradise Now. This year, Abu Assad has been nominated again, this time for Omar, a thriller and a love story. After half a century of near misses, neither Israeli nor Palestinian filmmakers have brought home an Academy Award. The unpredictable reality of the region provides endless material for great cinema, and many are hoping it will finally produce an Oscar.
Just so you know, we're living in the most interesting place in the world. And with me for a look at the economy is financial analyst Lionel Friedfeld. Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
So Russia and Ukraine are deeply connected. We know that, but the key word of this connection is gas.
It's definitely gas, but it's definitely also, I think, the willingness of Putin. He just announced that he's like investing $5 billion into Ukraine, to help actually Russian corporates developing in Ukraine, which is amazing. And I think he had the intention last December to create kind of a bilateral agreement to help Ukraine to increase. But definitely gas is on the roadmap. Ukraine is like distributing towards Europe, all the gas, which is very important. And Russia is the first commercial partner of Ukraine.
So basically, if Russia stops giving the gas to Ukraine, it actually can crash the economy in the Ukraine.
I think we'll definitely have the bad, bad consequences. But I think Russia has other intent. They also want to take part of all the commodities that Ukraine has. Ukraine has a lot of gas, also, but of like aluminum, potassium, a lot of different, even agricultural commodities. But usually, Russian investors like to invest into Ukraine because you have a lot of people speaking Russians, and it's very easy for them to invest. But the real question is that Russia has been a 2% growth, which is very mild, for the past few years, and the economy is focused on oil and gas, and the Ukrainian economy is not doing so great. Today the GDP of Ukraine is around $300 billion.
So if we're looking at it from the economy perspective, the deal between Russia and Ukraine, is it that bad?
It's not that. Maybe there is a huge opportunity for Russia, to take part of the assets of Ukraine, and I think it's what they're looking for. Because look at Ukraine, it's the second largest country in the European, its strategic borders with Poland, with Hungary, with Slovakia. So the strategic place of the country is very important. But if you look today at Ukraine, and Ukraine is missing money today. There is a $35 billion missing, for the state, and who is going to pay for that? This is a big question mark. Russia pledged for $5 billion. The IMF and international institution pledged for $1 billion. The European Union for $2 billion. But there is missing at least $25 billion to stand the economy.
Of course, and just to understand before we're finishing, how much money is it costing this, let's say, small war for now to Kiev?
I mean, it's huge amount of money because it's disrupting all the economy. And if you think all the commodity market are going to have a big impact. And if you count that Russia, 3/4 of the GDP of Russia is based on export, which is amazing. And the GDP of Russia today is $1,800 billion. So it's a huge economy compared to Ukraine. But, the small country can really have a lot of consequences on a larger country like Russia.
Yes, Lionel Friedfeld, thank you very much for this.
Thank you.
Hong Kong's freedom fighters held a mass protest today, saying its media independence was in jeopardy following Wednesday's attack on a newspaper editor. Shahar Peled has more.
Thousands took to the streets of Hong Kong today to protest against threats to freedom of the press, days after a former newspaper editor was stabbed in broad daylight.
Basic law promises press freedom. The reality is quite different. We have story ideas barred, interviews not allowed, certain names should not appear in the paper. This is the kind of reality the Hong Kong media is facing, and we are really concerned about that.
Kevin Lau, former editor of the investigative Ming Pao newspaper, was left in a critical condition after last week's brutal attack, seen as a warning that the city's media independence is in jeopardy as Beijing seeks tighter control. No arrests have been made so far, as the protesters condemned the vicious assault and urged police to solve the case quickly.
Today we stand firm to say no to violence and ask the police to get the one who committed the crime.
Earlier this month, the International Committee to Protect Journalists said media freedom in Hong Kong was at a low point, citing self-censorship among reporters, financial and physical threats against the media, and legislative steps that could hinder investigative reporting. The attack on Lao provoked shock in a city known for its safety, leading the people of Hong Kong to stop taking freedom of media for granted.
And joining me right now for a look at sports is host of the I-24 News Sports Magazine, Jonathan Regev. Jono, hello.
Evening, Lucy.
Fresh out of the oven, Madrid Derby.
And the winner is Oscar, and the winner is no winner.
No
2-2 was the score, but it was a great game, one of the most beautiful goals we've seen this year.
Excited.
Yes, I am. It was scored by Atletico. I am biased. I said that. I am ready to say that. I like Atletico Madrid, not because I'm their fan, but because they changed things in Spain. That's why I like them. So it's 2-2. Do we have any big conclusions? No, because if Real Madrid would have won, then we would have said Atletico is out of the race. They're still there. If Atletico would have won, we say they're tied again at the top. That didn't happen either. Real Madrid still hold a 3-point lead over Atletico, but it's very, very interesting. And they both still have to face Barcelona, the other team in this triangle. So it's going to be very, very interesting all the way to the end in Spain. That's the way we like it. Interesting all the way to the end.
That's the way you like it.
Unbiased as I can be.
And we're moving to Roger Federer. It was too early to declare his...
Whoever told him to retire... Think again, because it's been almost more than a year and a half since he won a big tournament, since he won Wimbledon actually in 2012. He won a few other tournaments ever since, but nothing big. That is until last night when he won the Dubai Open, a very, very big tournament. He won, he beat Thomas Berdych from the Czech Republic in the final, but the big, big victory came in the semifinal. He beat Novak Djokovic. Novak Djokovic is the #2 seed in the world, but in my view, he is the best player in the world. Federer beat him, and he said, well, all you youngsters, you hold on for a minute. I am the best. Roger Federer is the best tennis player in history, as far as I see it, and he's not ready to go yet.
I'm still here.
Yes, I'm still here. Hold on, boys. Hold on. You and Nadal, Djokovic, play around. I'm still. Don't take me for granted.
Hold your horses.
Oh, yes.
Like we love to say. And we're moving to the Oscar Pistorius trial, which is actually everybody looking forward to this.
It's not just a South African story. The trial of Oscar Pistorius will start tomorrow in South Africa. Just let's remind everyone, he's the first amputee athlete who competed in the regular Olympics with the Blade Runner, with those blades in his feet. He competed that was the main achievement. He has a couple of gold medals in the Paralympics. He also competed in the regular Olympics. But a few months after the London Olympics, he was charged with the murder of his girlfriend Riva Steenkamp. He killed her in their house. That we know. He said he thought she was a burglar, but we also heard there were a couple of incidents in the home. So it's not yet clear what has happened. And the trial
there was a fight or there wasn't a fight.
Exactly, whether it's a murder or it was a mistake, we don't really know that. The trial begins tomorrow. There are a couple of TV cameras inside the courtroom that will transmit whatever happens there outside. The whole world is interested because Oscar Pistorius really has risen as high as you can, and now is in one of the lowest points.
The whole world is actually going to watch this.
Yes.
And I have to say that it still is a mystery how come a big star like him is getting to this point.
And this is just, if it happened in February 2013, just 6 months after the London Olympics, when he was praised. I mean, he did something historic. He was the Paralympic that competed in the regular Olympic. That's as high as you can be.
And of course, you will be here to update us about everything that is happening. Jono, thank you very much for this.
Lucy.
And we're going out for a small break, and then we will be back with more news. Don't go anywhere. 2 minutes.